Hey friends, Amanda here, Bare Bones Living. Welcome back. And we have a very busy weekend ahead of us. We are dispatching Tiger today. Our feeder pig is the last feeder pig that we have of the 4 that we had this year. And we sold the other 3. And we're keeping Tiger for ourselves. And this is the least favorite day of mine on the farm, because even though we bought Tiger for a very specific purpose, we bought all of our feeders for a very specific purpose, and we have always known that that was their purpose, does not make it any easier to do when it comes time for that to happen. It's a lot easier to, like I said, we sold the other 3, and when that happens, we take them alive to the butcher. So that's not as hard, right? Because we see them alive, we take them alive, and then we say goodbye and walk away, and we don't have any part of the rest of the process. But when we process them for ourselves, we have to do all of that. And we have done this twice before with our 2 feeders from last year. So we have done this before. It was harder, I think, last time because we were closer to those pigs. They were friendlier. And they were our first pigs. So we were much more hands-on, wanting to be with them, things like that. But it is never easy to take a life, and it is a lot of work for me, especially because I am the one that does all of the processing. Mike helps me. He does the dispatch, and then together we scold and scrape and part her out, or at least cut her in half. And then I do all the processing, packaging, seasoning, grinding, canning, curing, smoking, all of the things. So I have a lot of work that goes into this meat. So it's very exhausting, and it's also trying on my heart, my soul. It's trying on the boys. They grow an attachment even though they know, what these pigs are for. Cole's favorite was Orange, and we just sold her a couple weeks ago, and he was very sad to see her go. And Hunter, our oldest, his quote-unquote favorite is Tiger. They each named their own pig, so Hunter's a little upset right now. And he said he wanted to come out and watch this, and we were like, I don't think that's a good idea. But it's one bad day for Tiger. And she has had almost a year, or she is a year old. We have not had her for a year because obviously we didn't have her for the first 8 weeks of her life. But we've had her for almost a year on our farm, and today is her one bad day. So she is the lone survivor. Her personality definitely changed after the others disappeared, and she actually, same thing happened with Frank once his brother was gone. She totally calmed down because she wasn't fighting for food. She was the runt of all 4 of our pigs. And once her sister was gone, her personality totally changed, and she wasn't so wild, she wasn't so aggressive, and she has let us pet her now and things like that, which is wild because pigs are very social animals. But we blessed you, Tiger. You're a good girl. Thank you very much. Yeah. So this video is not about me dispatching Tiger or butchering Tiger. There will be nothing graphic in this video, so you're all good there. But we did process Tiger this weekend. It took me 2 days to completely dispatch, eviscerate, quarter into subprimals, which on a pig is like in 3 sections. So you have your front shoulder, your belly, and then the rear end, hind leg, ham area. And then of those 3 subprimals, your front shoulder, the top is actually the Boston butt, the bottom is called a picnic roast, then the back of the pig is where you get, that's where your loin is and your ribs, or if you choose to do bone-in pork chops, which is what we usually do. We do not own a I don't remember what they're called, but that table saw thing that you cut meat with. We do not own one of those. So I cut our meat with a jigsaw. And this time we tried taking the ribs out so that we could have baby back ribs and have boneless chops. But that comes on the back, and then the belly is where you get all your bacon from, and then the hind end, that is your ham, and you can choose to do with that, you know, whatever you want. But parting out all those pieces, so what we did was we took the Boston butts and I cut them in half, and I'll just tell you what we kind of came out with. So I have 4 Boston butts that are each about 4 pounds, because there's a butt on each side, and then I cut those in half and they ended up being about 4 pounds each. I did take out the spare ribs, so I have 2 sets of spare ribs, 2 sets of baby back ribs, 2 tenderloins, and then I have bone in and boneless, because when you take the whole back, the first part is where your baby back ribs are, and then there's like a rear end of that pork area, or that chop area, and that is bone in, that's past where the baby back ribs are. And of the chops, I got about 8 pounds of chops from each half, which came out to 10 dinners for my family packaged of pork chops. And then I took the jowls for bacon off the head, and then the masseter muscle, which is underneath the jowl. I packaged those separately for slow cooking. And then the rest of it, so that was the picnic roast, which is the lower part of the front shoulder, and then both rear ends, both of our hams, we chopped up for grinding. And we got all of that packaged, cut, packaged, and then ground over the weekend until late last night. And the ground came to 52.5 pounds of ground pork. And then I still have, and I just did one grind on all that just to get it off the bone and ground. And then I still have all the fat that I'm rendering. I still have the bones from all of like the arms and the leg bones and stuff like that. I took all that meat off and that went into our ground, but I still have those bones and I'm going to be making broth out of that. And I think that's everything. So we were able to process up to that point right now. And what I had, so last night I ground all the fat. I separated the leaf lard from the back lard and any other lard that any big clumps of lard that I had collected. And I ground that. And the reason I did that is because it renders down faster the smaller the pieces are. And I put them in 2 separate crock pots overnight, and they are ready to be put into their jars, and that process will then be over as well. So in this crock pot, I have the leaf lard, and you can see here that there's just little bits left. This is what it cooks down to. These are cracklins that are left over, the byproduct, after you render it down. But I'm going to be taking this out, all this liquid lard out, and I will use a strainer to put it into these small jars here. And these are just paste jars that I hold on to and reuse, and I like putting the leaf lard into these. What I do for this is I get a funnel and I put it inside the jar, and then I stick a strainer above the funnel, and then I just ladle in the lard, and any bits that I pick up will get caught by the strainer. And it is hot. So I am being careful since I'm trying to show you guys how I do this. I don't usually hold these while I'm doing it. There, that one is filled all the way. Hot. And I did catch some bits. Take out that funnel. I'll put my lid on tight, and then I'll flip it over. And I will keep it on its head like this for 3 to 5 minutes so that it can warm up this lid in this ring and warm the rubber that is inside of this lid. And then I will flip it back right side up, and whoops. And eventually, as it cools, the heat will suck it down, and the little pop top that comes on these will be sealed down. And then it'll be sealed and shelf stable. And then in here you can see this is my back lard. And there are bigger chunks in here because inevitably what I have learned over processing multiple pigs is if I don't do it right away, or like in the week that I'm processing all the pork, and I get tired and I say, I'm just gonna go freeze that and I'll get to it at a later date, that just does not happen. So I had all this rendered down, and then this morning I realized that I forgot to, there was another package in the freezer that had pork lard in it from our first pig that I processed over a year ago. And I forgot to add that in here. So I then threw that in here, but that's why there's these bigger chunks. But this too is done, and this one I will put into a larger jar for storage. Okay, so I got 4 of these little paste jars for my leaf lard, and they had already been upside down for some time while I had repeated the steps on the other lard. So I flipped them over, and one of them has already popped, but I just flipped them over. And then, like I said, I just repeated the same steps for the other lard, and I ran out of the bigger jars, so I went ahead and used some more of the smaller jars. I typically don't like to use my mason jars, my canning jars, for the lard, so I just save glass jars that I use, and that works out fine for me. And anything that doesn't seal, I will just keep in the refrigerator, and it's still good to use, and it lasts forever. One thing to note about this, don't like freak out about headspace. Like, as you can see, this one is filled all the way up to the top, this one is not, and this one is very much not. I don't really worry about headspace. I typically like to bring it to the ridge here with the liquid, so you can see that's where that like line is, right at the neck. That's typically my aiming point, but I ran out. This was my last one. Or no, this one. There we go. This one was my last one. And so that's all that was left in there, and it will still seal and be fine. And like I said, even if it doesn't seal, I'll just put it in the refrigerator. So pretty much what I'm trying to say is, don't sweat the small stuff. Just do it, see what happens. If all else fails, use it right away, put it in your refrigerator, or keep it on your counter like I've been doing. This is lard from, doesn't even have a date on it, but I just started processing pigs last year, so a year old. And it has not been sitting on my counter for a year, but it's been sitting on my counter for a week now. Totally cool. Okay, I just wanted to jump on here real quick and say that that wasn't all that we got. Those weren't all the cuts that we got, because I forgot to weigh the jowls, the bacon, and the bones. I also did not get a weight on the fat, but you saw, but I showed all the fat that I rendered, and that is all sealed and on my shelves already, but I did not take a weight on that. So the jowls together, and you get one from either side. I did tell you the weight of the masseter, which is the muscle that's underneath the jowl, but not the jowl itself. So those together were 2 pounds, 7.9 ounces. And then the bacon, I got a total of 15 pounds, 7 ounces. And then the bones, I got a total of 15 pounds, 1.5 ounces. And the bones are actually, I'm roasting them currently to make stock out of them. So I had forgotten, sorry, those measurements. And more importantly, or equally as important, I suppose, is her size. She was our runt by far. Her and her sister were the runts of their litter. Her sister came in at 200 pounds and she was butchered a month ago. And we misplaced our scale that we use to weigh our game and meat. So I just did the measuring method, which that's always off for me. But I did measure her, and the way that you weigh pigs based off of measurements is their girth times their girth, which girth is around the chest, behind the arms. So girth measurement was 39, so that was her around. And then her length, which is between her ears at the top with her head in like a neutral, like looking at you position. So between her ears to the base of her tail at her rear. And that was 44 inches. So you do girth times length divided by 400. And she only came in at 167 pounds. 167.31, but whatever. So that's a roundabout number for her live weight, which is not at all what I am looking for in my meat animals. But that is just as big as she was going to get. I knew that they were going to be smaller pigs when I picked them up. Their parents were smaller. They were very heavy on the kune traits, which I don't look for in IPPs. I don't really, the only thing I like out of the IPPs or out of the kune breed is their stature. They're smaller to the ground, lower to the ground. I like their noses, that they're upturned and they like to graze more and things like that. And they're sunnier dispositions, I suppose. But I don't care for the wattles, which they had, which I didn't know until I butchered one, that those wattles actually have bones in them. So that was new to me. Because not all IPPs have wattles. But I knew they were going to be small. I'm not really happy with that number, but she was over a year. She's a year old. She wasn't going to grow anymore. She's 167 pounds. So I think what we yielded was pretty good for her live weight only being 167 pounds. And just because I was curious, I did total all that out. I did not add the weight of the bones because that's not something that we are going to be I'm going to be making broth, but I'm not figuring that into my meat configuration. So I did not add the bones, the weight of the bones, but the weight of everything else, excluding the bones and excluding the fat, which I still got products from. But off of a 167 pound pig, we got 117 pounds of meat and usable meat between the butts, the ribs, the tenderloin, the chops, the masseter, the ground, and the bacon and jowls. So I'm actually very stoked about that. I didn't think it was going to be that high, and so that makes me very happy. And if you are anything like me, you're wondering what 52 pounds of meat ground pork looks like. This is it. This is a big tote, size of my hand. full, chuck full. In full disclosure, there's actually 55 pounds in here because like I said earlier in this video, that I had left over portions of a previous pig that I had, the first pig that I butchered, I did not process all at once. So there was one more chunk of meat that needed to be ground that I ground with this, making it a total of 55 pounds. So there's an extra 3 pounds in there that didn't come from this pig, but that's a lot of ground that I need to process. And what I'm doing is breakfast sausage, mild Italian sausage, sweet Italian sausage, and chorizo, and just plain ground pork that we can make some Asian dishes with as well. So that is the plan for these, or this whole bin here that I need to get working on. As well as I had these 2 slabs of bacon from that first pig that I will be curing and smoking while I am doing the bacon that I just harvested from Tiger. So words of wisdom, do it all at once, at least for me, because this is now over a year-old bacon that has not done anything, and that drives me crazy. So I know I didn't show you a lot of what I am actually doing with all of this. This was more of just like my numbers and saying goodbye to Tiger. I will be making more videos of me actually processing all of this ground pork that's in front of me. I have videos on me making bacon, which I will link the cards up here. In that video, I said that I made a mistake in the seasoning, which, going off of the recipe that I was using, I did make the mistake, but we loved that bacon. So I am going ahead with the recipe that is listed in this video's description for all of my bacon. That is belly bacon, jowl bacon, whatever, and we are smoking it all. I also have a video that I will link here for my mild Italian sausage and my breakfast sausage. And then I will be making a video on the sweet Italian sausage and the chorizo. And then like I said, I already have the other videos, so keep an eye out for those. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you guys for stopping by today and joining in on our journey here at Bare Bones Living. We'll catch you on the next one.